Hello, I'm Rachel from Douentza Garden in Ireland, and you are very welcome to this video all about making a free organic liquid fertilizer for your plants and for your garden. So today we're going to make some Comfrey tea. So why Comfrey, you ask? And the truth is that Comfrey has really deep roots that go down in the soil, and they get even lower than the roots of other plants. And that means that they can access nutrients that other plants can't. Now, those nutrients are brought up and stored in the leaves of the plant, and you can access them by harvesting the leaves and breaking them down and creating a rich, nutrient-rich feed that your plants can use. A liquid feed, and liquid feeds are particularly good because they're in a form that the roots of plants can readily access. Now, Comfrey fertilizer is rich in potassium, which means it's excellent for any plants, particularly pot plants that are producing flowers or fruit. You can alternatively put it on the flowers or vegetables in your garden. The next question, of course, is where do you find this Comfrey? And the truth is that Comfrey is a weed, a noxious weed in many parts of the world, and it spreads by seed dispersal. Now, if you want a ready supply of Comfrey to use as free fertilizer, then you should probably grow the Comfrey in your garden, but you don't want it weeding about, seeding about. The traditional solution is to use a sterile variety, and there's one called Bocking 14. Catchy title, eh? And this is generally used as the one that many gardeners, particularly vegetable gardeners, will use. They'll grow a whole line of it and then just have ready access to this plant for making fertilizer. However, I find it really ugly and I certainly don't want it in my garden. So my solution is to use a variegated form of Comfrey. Now, I use Symphytum Goldsmith, which is a beautiful variety with green leaves and yellow edges, and I grow it as an ornamental, but it still works as well as a fertilizer. There are other varieties too, like Axminster Gold, which is taller and also quite well behaved. Grow Comfrey in any good moist garden soil. It likes sun or partial shade, and it's hardy to -20. Now, you can harvest the leaves for your fertilizer in either spring, summer or autumn. If you do it in spring and the leaves are just new and emerging, don't take too many in case you might deplete the plant and lose it. Alternatively, you can collect those leaves in autumn just before the plant is about to go dormant, so it would lose the leaves anyway. I, however, prefer to harvest in June, just after flowering. I find that my variegated Comfrey begins to look a bit tattered after flowering, so for aesthetics it makes sense to cut it to the ground and encourage fresh new growth. This also stops the plants seeding about, although I really don't find seeding so much of an issue with the variegated types. Since you have to cut the plant back anyway, why not use the leaves for fertilizer? The best advice when cutting back Comfrey is to wear gloves, as some people may find the hairy leaves an irritant. Next up, you'll need to remove tough stems and any flowers. The Comfrey leaves are where the potassium and other nutrients are locked in, and they'll make excellent fertilizer. Now I'm transferring the leaves to a container with a lid. I'm breaking the leaves up a little so that they'll fit in easily, but you really don't need to do this. The stems, flowers and any leftover leaves can be added to your compost heap. If you are using wild Comfrey, be careful, however, not to add any seed heads to your compost. I'm now placing a rock on top of the leaves so that they won't float when I add water. Cover your comfrey leaves with water, and when this is done, put the lid on top. The lid isn't important for converting the comfrey leaves into liquid fertilizer, but it is important to stop your garden stinking to high heaven. Now place your container in an out of the way spot and leave it to stew for 3 to 4 weeks. Here it is. So all of the process you just saw was carried out on the 6th of June, and it's the 17th of July today, and my fertilizer has been left for over 4 weeks. It should be well stewed by now. So we're going to take a look, but just before we get on with it, I'll just pop on some gloves. Now you're probably asking why the gloves. Well, let me tell you, this stuff stinks to high heaven, and if you get it on your hands, well, it can take a long time to come out. And this is what we want, a dark, rich liquid that's just yummy for plants. This is sometimes known as comfrey tea, but I have to tell you that the term comfrey tea is just wrong. Tea suggests something a person might drink, but when you get a whiff of this foul concoction, you'll definitely not want to drink it at all. It really stinks. First up, I'll need to remove that rock you saw me put in there without sticking my hands into the solution, as it'll be hard to get the smell off afterwards. I'm now going to strain and dilute this fertilizer before I use it on my plants. Using an old bucket which has been rinsed, I pour liquid through a cheese mould into the bucket from the container. You can use a garden sieve or plant pot with small holes as your strainer. But be careful of splashback, as it'll ruin your clothes. Now I have a concentrated fertilizer. I'll need to dilute it at a ratio of 10 to 1 before I use it on my plants. The solids can go on the compost. This watering can already has 9 litres of water in it. I'm adding a litre of Comfrey fertilizer concentrate. I'll give it a good mix, and now I can feed my plants. I always wonder at this ratio of 10 to 1, which is the one generally quoted by the RHS and other gardening sources. Surely it depends on how much water you originally added. Everyone will add slightly more or slightly less, but the ratio of 10 to 1 is what is quoted, and I think it must err a bit on the cautious side, taking into account that some people will have just barely covered their comfrey leaves with water, and others, like me, put more on top. So now nothing left to do except to use some of this fertilizer on my plants. And as for the remaining fertilizer, the remaining concentrate, well, you could store it in like a plastic bottle or something like that, whatever you have lying around, as long as it's airtight. Or you could make it up with water and store it like that as well if you have more storage items. But in any case, in my case, I'm going to pour it back into the container it came from and continue using it during the summer. It will certainly be all gone by the time autumn comes, and my comfrey plant needs to be cut again to make more fertilizer for next year. So that brings me to the end of this video on making comfrey fertilizer. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed my tips for this, that and the other, the variegated comfrey as a garden ornamental, etc. And I hope you'll check back again soon for lots more gardening videos. Bye!